So this is my third time visiting this flip of mine, and I'm gonna make $27,000 on it. And the crucial part about this is the fact that I've spent so little time on it. See, very easily this $27,000 profit could have turned into an absolute mess if I decided to do the work myself, if I decided to painstakingly spend lots of time analyzing, studying, figuring out if it's even a good deal, spend lots of time micromanaging every piece of it, and then on the sales side, spend a lot of time listing it myself to save money. And the reason I didn't have to do any of that, the reason this made me so much money, is because I spent more money not doing the renovations myself, not analyzing the deal myself, and not trying to sell it myself. In fact, I did literally basically nothing. A lot of new investors, you're gonna start off, you're gonna wanna do all of these because you think by saving $1 and trying to do the work yourself, you're going to make more in the long run, but unfortunately flipping is a speed game, it's a time game. And even if I made $10,000 less and you would make $10,000 more, but it took you the course of 4 to 6 months and you had to do all this time and effort daily in and out of here renovating yourself, I still make way more per hour than you do. So I'm gonna talk about my systems and how I've set it up so that I can do it exactly that way. We'll start with acquisition, the renovation, and the disposition, me selling the property at the end. So let's start first with acquisition. How did I find this deal with basically no effort? So as far as acquisition, we got two parts. One, quick analysis of the deal. Whenever I look at deals, I don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out, does this make sense or does it not? Because I have to go through so many of them. I only really spend about 2 hours a day really analyzing deals. Sure, that doesn't mean I'm gonna make like massive amounts of money by getting tons and tons of deals. It also means this is a very casual business for me and I can do it at my own speed and pace. So how do I find a lot of good deals with only really 2 hours a day of actually searching? One, have an easy plug and play formula that works for all your properties. So for me, my purchase price, very easy formula for this, that's purchase price equals my ARV, which is after repair value, multiply that by 75%. Okay, so why are we doing that first off? So ARV, that value at the end, normally if I want to hold the property in any kind of capacity, they're only gonna let me refinance up to 75% in order to keep it for myself. That's all the money they'll give me. So if I don't want to leave any money in the deal, I need to make sure my all-in cost does not exceed that number for a buy and hold perspective. But even for a flip perspective, if we look at that final 25%, generally your sales cost is going to be 5% for the realtors and then 5% for the actual recordation taxes and everything else that goes as far as closing costs. That leaves another 15%. I personally like to make sure that my profit is 10% of ARV. So on this deal here, I usually would have wanted, let's say if it's a $300,000 deal, I would have wanted to make $30,000. That to me justifies the risk that I took on the flip. That extra 5% in that 25% formula is basically my margin of error. And that is what lets us in both directions for the flip and on the hold side get to that 75% number. So ARV, total after it's going to be totally repaired, multiply that by 75%, then subtract the reno cost. Problem is, a lot of reno costs are kind of hard to figure out, and most of the time I'm just looking at pictures. So I have it kind of like this. Everything costs either $25,000, $45,000, $75,000, or $100,000. Never costs anything other than those four numbers. And so that way I can easily plug it in. Okay, if it's a light cosmetic, $25K. If it's maybe a renovation where I have to do 1 or 2 major systems, $45K. What if it's like a pretty much overhaul, let's redo everything about this house, $75K. And then if it's a gut, $100K. And then I established, okay, that only works for any property that's about 2,200 square feet or less. And that also, of course, can fluctuate slightly based on bathrooms. Obviously, this is not an accurate number. Remember, we're going for speed here. I want to make as much money per hour as I can, so I don't want to spend all day looking at this thing. So with just that formula, ARV multiplied by 75% minus reno, then subtract an extra $10K for closing costs on the purchase side. As long as I can fit in that reno box, one of those 4 numbers, and then it makes sense, I'm done looking. Now, cool, I'm gonna go into the negotiation phase and we talk to the wholesaler, we talk to the realtor and get that price locked in. Maybe we do a final walkthrough to hone in our numbers from there, but that allows me to go through 100 deals and find the ones I actually feel like looking at. Finally, we can give it to our general contractor and get to phase number 2 of, well, why I only visited this property 3 times. Now, for you newer investors, this is gonna be a little difficult without getting insane pricing and stuff. But if you have experience with knowing the renovation process, if you are very good at talking to a contractor, you can get a general contractor to give you a reasonable price. So literally for this contract, there was almost really no contract at all. That sounds crazy, but a lot of times you'll do it with no contract. And my general contractor was like, yeah, this is gonna cost you $60K. And I was like, cool. And that was it. That was the conversation. I didn't even know what he was really gonna do, to be honest. Now, obviously, for many of you, you're probably gonna wanna have a list of items, at least, hey, here's the minimums of exactly what I need done. But for me, I had worked with this guy for so many times that I already knew what he was going to do. So he went in here, and that's where I visited twice, really just out of almost mild curiosity more than anything. And I can make quick on-the-fly decisions from there. Now, the problem is when you first start, you're going to want to either do it yourself, big mistake in my opinion, or micromanage the contractors. If you do it yourself, I would rather do it myself with the contractors, so that way you can at least keep them in line, make sure your renovation goes on budget and smooth if you must do it yourself. And I would at least do it with a contractor so you can start building some sort of relationship with the contractor. If you just simply do it yourself, then by the time you're done doing it yourself, you have no relationship and you almost feel like you're at ground zero again. Do it with them. Now, if you do the contract with them, if you do the whole build with them, make sure not to annoy them. Make sure to not ask too many questions. Don't get too nitpicky. Just kind of go along with them. You can let them know that you're going to join the renovation project, but don't ask a million questions. They're not your mentor. Okay, you're just simply helping out, and this might keep them honest as far as timelines and such, but definitely don't harass them about it. After that point, you want to get general contractors in there. You're going to pay generally about 20% more than what you would pay normally. So on this job, I lost some money by paying more. He charged me $60,000. Could I have gotten it more for like 45? 100%. Probably could have. If I had micromanaged the hell out of this thing. But again, I was only here 3 days. So, and this is really the 3rd day with me here sitting here filming with you. So I'd say that's pretty good. So then finally we get to the last part that a lot of people like to micromanage, and I really think you shouldn't. You should be as lazy as possible about this one. And we're talking about selling the property on the flip side. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the 3rd part of this process, and that is selling. So with selling, you really have a couple parts that I try to automate as much as possible. Number 1, get it looking as good as possible for your realtor. A lot of realtors love it if you stage the property. I recommend staging the property. It's an extremely nominal cost for a very high value. So if you need a staging company and you're happy to be in the Maryland area, absolutely hook you up with one who does all of my stagings, and they do a fantastic job. But as far as that, you're also going to want a realtor whom essentially you're going to go kind of 2 routes with this. Either you want a realtor who goes all out, but of course you're going to pay premium pricing. Not only do you pay premium pricing, but you also want to give the buyer's agent maybe a little bit more on their end as well. Maybe instead of 2.5%, maybe 3%. Maybe if you want to push 3.5%. But you want to make sure everyone is paid well. By paying well, you can really incentivize the sale, you incentivize them to push harder for your project. Now, I happen to go the complete opposite route. I give my realtor as absolute little to do as possible, and I make sure everything is easy. So I get the staging done, get the photos done, hand it to the realtor. The realtor never has to visit the property, give them the lockbox, and boom, they just set up showings. They essentially act as a transaction coordinator and nothing more. They don't do open houses, they don't try to market it or do anything crazy. They stick it on the MLS and let the price that I set and the look of the house sell itself. If I'm very confident I go this route, because that means I get everything for a flat $3,000 fee or whatever me and that realtor have negotiated. And this can vary depending on the realtor. That one being just an example. So if you want to go the super cheap route, don't try to browbeat your realtor and say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, and by the way, I want you to do it for less. You can't ask for more and then charge less. So you either want everything and then you give everyone even more than they were expecting, or make them as lazy as possible, make sure they do as little as possible, and then you can get the price you're really looking for. Just depends on how you think the house is going to perform. And in this case, as a glorified transaction coordinator, they do all of it. I then make sure I get my minimum pricing to make this make sense for me, and that is where that 5% margin that I told you about earlier comes into play, so that way you can make sure you have have some flex room. You don't want to sit there and try to have your realtor negotiate with a whole bunch of people if you're only paying them a flat minimum fee to do the job. Well, anyway, that's how I spent exactly 3 days on this property, and I guess technically a few extra hours because of analyzing it just to find this deal. So, if you have any questions about that, let me know, comment below, I will answer them, and I will talk to you very soon.